In this video, we're going to go through some of the settings that you can customize in your Power BI reports to make your user experience a lot better. We're going to go through each one of these different settings and why you should turn off or use them in the first place. All of that and more. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan, and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. So Power BI has continued to improve itself over the past few years, and with that comes with a lot more features that gives your users different ways to interact with their own data. However, for new business users who have never used Power BI before, a lot of these features can be a little bit overwhelming. So there might be a case for you as a report developer to make sure that this experience is intuitive or more focused. So you might want to enable features or even sometimes disable them to either, as I mentioned, simplify the experience, or maybe it's a feature that is something that is to be introduced later when the data maturity within the business is a lot higher. So let's start with the first simple thing that I can give you as a tip, which is to disable the filter pane on the right hand side. So the filter pane, if you didn't know, is a feature that lets you control the filters that are being applied to the visual, the page, or all of the pages within the report. It gives you a lot of control over these filters, lets you search and add as many filters as you want and change how they're being filtered, show the top 10, or just select certain filters. However, from my experience working with business users over the past few years, I find that the filter pane where it is in the screen is not intuitive, and a lot of its features, although it gives a lot of control to your users, can be quite overwhelming. A good example is how the filter panes and the scopes work. So although as you can see here, there are three different, if I select the visual here, there are three different sections in this filter pane. And if I expand it here, you can see that you can either select a month or change the different filter types here. A lot of the business users that I work with tend to get really confused, especially about the scopes, which is kind of given, or it's very obvious for report developers, but not so much for users who are fairly new to using interactive reports. So what I tend to do when it comes to enabling filtering experience is to instead hide the filter pane here, which is just this button on top of the pane, and instead to opt for something more simpler, which is perhaps using this slicer visual here, which lets you select, like, for example, just add the categories here, and I would put that as a drop down, which is a far simpler and more obvious way of how to filter the page itself, because it's a lot more intuitive, and where it is in the page fits a lot better with how most reports really work. The next thing that you can customize are the header icons. So by default, when you create visuals in your page, the header icons will be enabled for that visual. So the header icons is what I mean is when you hover over that visual, you can see these pop-ups on the top right-hand side, which might be different if it's on the service, but regardless, it's these icons here. So a lot of them are fairly useful. Like, for example, the filter on visual lets you see how this visual is being filtered, or which filter is affecting the result of this visual. Or maybe the focus mode, which lets you expand or maximize that view so that you're focusing on just this one element in the report. But did you know that you can customize this further and enable or disable certain features here on these icons? So if you click on that visual and go to the properties section, as you can see here, you can disable or enable the header icons. It will still show up in Power BI desktop just because you are in editing mode, but once you publish it in the service, your users won't see that pop up on the right hand side if you don't want them to. However, if we keep that enabled and let's expand on that, there are a few other things that you can customize here. So the first thing that you can see here are the colors of the header icons, so how they show up when your users hover over them. So being able to change the colors of these header icons is pretty important, especially if you have reports in certain themes. Like I've created dark mode themes, for example, and this just makes sure that the header icons fit the theme of your report. The next thing here are some of the icons that is available that will show up on this more options screen. So there are a lot of icons here that are enabled, and you might not need all of them. So you can disable some of them that are not very useful or is not being widely used in your business, just to keep this experience a lot simpler. So some of the things, like for example, disabling the pinning feature, which is a feature that lets you pin visuals into dashboards. So I haven't actually used that in a business setting for a very long time. So if I'm not exploring or using that feature, I would tend to just turn it off, at least until I've introduced that. Another thing is perhaps if you don't want your users to be able to select the more options, the 3 dots on your visuals, you can simply just disable that, which prevents your users from exporting the data from your visuals. And one icon here that I seem to just consistently add in a lot of my reports is the help tooltip icon. So if you click on that, what it will do is it will add this new section here at the bottom. And as you'll notice on the visual itself, it's created this question mark hover over icon, which if you hover will show the text that you put in this tooltip text. And by the way, that tooltip text doesn't necessarily need to be a text. You can change that into a reports tooltip, which is very, very flexible because you can customize and make that tooltip a lot more dynamic than just using a text. So the help tooltip icon is really helpful, especially for your business users who are not too familiar with a specific visual, for example. They can rely on knowing that every single visual in your page will have a help tooltip icon, which will give them that extra context that they need, so that if they are looking at it, they can get some simple explanations as to what that visual is showing. Speaking of tooltips, another way, or the main way that you can add tooltips, is through the tooltips property on the tooltip section in your reports. So by default, if we just select the line chart here, by default, when you hover over any of these data points in each of these months, you will see a basic tooltip icon, which just shows you those data points. So what that date is and what is the total sales for that month. However, you can customize that further by using custom tooltips. So you can customize that by going again to the property, and then under the tooltip section here, instead of using the auto, you can simply choose a report page instead. Well, so instead of using the default tooltips that it gives you, you can simply add another tooltip here, which is a custom tooltip that that you can add. Now there is nothing here that you can choose just because there are no tooltip type pages that you've created. I did create a video covering all about kind of creating custom tooltips, but the gist of it is if you create a new page here, and instead of creating a new standard page, you can create a tooltip page, add your details in here, make them dynamic, and then from here, from your visual, now you should be able to find that new page as an option for your tooltip. So adding more insights or details to the tooltips is a great way to kind of add some more context or detail to the visuals that you're showing without costing you the kind of page real estate of having to use a space within the page of your report itself. The next thing that I can give you is to customize the tab order of your visuals. Now, tab order is kind of going into the realms of accessibility features, but it's essentially the interactivity of how your visuals get selected when your users use keyboard shortcuts like tabbing, for example. Now, what I mean by that is that, for example, if, for example, your user selects a visual and they hit the tab, from sales, they want to, or the typical intuitive reaction needs to be that that tab needs to go to sequentially from left to right. So it needs to go from sales to quantity to average unit price to category name. And you can customize that by going to the selection pane, and under the tab order, you will have the list of all of the different visuals that you have in the page in the order that they will be selected in descending order. So what you want to do here is, for example, just make sure that your cards or your visuals are sorted in the logical order that they should be being selected. So for this one, for example, I'm just ordering them in this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4. As I hover over them, they get sort of selected, so you know exactly which ones they are. And this order just makes sure that they are being selected in the right order. One thing here that you can do as well is that if you have any visual elements that are purely for cosmetic purposes, like text boxes or shapes, you can actually disable them from this selection order so that your selection or your tabbing selection only affects the visuals that you are using in your report pages. And you can do that by simply just selecting the hide button right here. Now the hide doesn't disable or deselect that visual, it just simply removes it from the selection order when your users are clicking tab, so it will still function the same normal way. The last tip that I can give you is about simplifying distribution. So when you create different insights for your users, you will tend to have to create multiple reports that does different things. Now if you have a lot of users and a lot of reports, you might need to manage a lot of those links individually or manage those users' accesses individually. So instead of doing that, you should really be using the organization app feature. So the organization app feature lets you bundle multiple reports so that they're all in one place. You can simply just share the link to that app to your users and control and change their access in that one place. So here we are looking at one of the apps that I am currently working on, and as you can see, we have a few different reports here organized in this view. So as you can see, we have organization and recruitment, two different reports, but all shared in the same app. So instead of giving my users individual access to each of these reports, I can simply just hit the share button, copy the link, or just give them access to this app, and that's it. So they just need to keep that one link. So if we need to manage their access, row level access, audience access, which pages they have access to, or maybe we have to remove or add new reports, we can simply all do that within this same app without really giving them new links to click or new reports to access. It's all kind of managed in this one area. And that's really it for this video. I hope this has given you some ideas on how you can simplify your business users experience with your Power BI reports. Thanks for watching. As usual, give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.